The clock struck midnight, and the office was a graveyard, except for the faint sobs echoing from Cubicle 27. Nobody cried at Pinnacle Enterprises unless they were fired or about to be. Elena Marquez, the steely CEO of Pinnacle, stood frozen at the edge of the open-plan office, her designer heels silent on the polished floor. She'd stayed late to review quarterly reports, but the sound of distress pulled her away from her spreadsheets. It was past working hours, yet there was Maya Johnson, her newest marketing assistant, hunched over her desk, her face buried in her hands. Elena's first instinct was to walk away. Emotions were messy, and she ran a business, not a therapy session. But something about Maya's quiet, desperate sobs gnawed at her. She'd noticed Maya's work slipping lately. Missed deadlines, distracted presentations, and a haunted look that didn't belong on a 24-year-old with a freshly minted degree. Elena had assumed it was incompetence. Now she wasn't so sure. Elena didn't do personal. She'd clawed her way to the top of Pinnacle through grit and a reputation for being untouchable. A Latina woman who'd shattered glass ceilings in a world that rarely gave her kind a seat at the table. But Maya was black, young, and visibly crumbling under some unseen weight. Elena had seen that look before, not in boardrooms, but in the mirror years ago when she was the one struggling to prove she belonged. Against her better judgment, Elena decided to dig deeper. She'd follow Maya home tonight, not to spy, she told herself, but to understand why her employee was falling apart and why it bothered her so much. The city streets were slick with rain as Elena trailed Maya from a distance, her sleek black sedan blending into the urban blur. Maya's worn sneakers slapped against the pavement, her hoodie pulled tight against the drizzle. She didn't head to the subway or a modest apartment like Elena expected. Instead, Maya veered into a part of town Elena avoided, where the streetlights flickered, and the air carried the weight of neglect. Elena's grip tightened on the steering wheel. This wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was about answers. Maya stopped at a crumbling tenement building, its facade scarred with graffiti and broken windows. Elena parked a block away, her heart thudding as she watched Maya slip inside. The neighborhood screamed danger, but Elena's curiosity burned hotter than her fear. She stepped out, her heels clicking traitorously loud on the uneven sidewalk, and followed. The building's hallway reeked of mildew and desperation, and Elena's polished exterior felt like a costume here. She caught sight of Maya entering a third-floor apartment. The door left ajar. Voices angry, sharp spilled out, and Elena edged closer, her breath catching. Inside, the apartment was chaos. A woman, maybe Maya's mother, stood in the center, her voice raw with fury. "You think you're better than us now? With your fancy job and your fancy degree?" She spat. Maya stood rigid, her fists clenched, her face a mask of defiance and pain. A man tall, wiry, with bloodshot eyes loomed nearby, his presence menacing. "You owe us, Maya," he growled. "You don't get to walk away just 'cause you made it out." Elena's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a family argument. It was a battlefield. She pieced it together. Maya wasn't just struggling at work, she was carrying the weight of a family that resented her success. A family that saw her as a traitor for escaping their world. Elena's mind flashed to her own past, to the relatives who called her sellout when she left her barrio for college. But this was different. This was raw, visceral, and dangerous. Before Elena could retreat, the man's eyes snapped to the doorway. "Who's there?" he barked, storming toward her. Elena's heart leapt into her throat, but she held her ground, stepping into the dim light. Maya's eyes widened in horror. "Ms. Marquez? What are you doing here?" The room went silent, the air thick with suspicion. Elena's mind raced for an excuse, but the truth tumbled out instead. I was worried about you, she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. I heard you crying at the office. I followed you to make sure you were okay. The mother scoffed, her eyes narrowing. Okay? You think she's not okay? She's got a job, a paycheck more than we ever had. And you, lady, you got no business here. The man took a step closer, his posture threatening, but Elena didn't flinch. She'd faced down boardrooms full of men who thought she didn't belong. This was just another kind of fight. Maya, Elena said, locking eyes with her employee. You don't have to stay here. Whatever's going on, you don't have to carry it alone. Her words were a lifeline, but they ignited the room. The man lunged forward, shouting, You don't get to take her from us. Maya's mother grabbed his arm, but the tension snapped like a taut wire. Maya stood frozen, torn between loyalty to her family and the escape Elena offered. Elena's pulse raced, but she kept her voice calm. I'm not taking anyone. I'm offering a choice. She turned to Maya, her eyes fierce with conviction. You're not just an employee, Maya. You're better than this. You're worth more than this. The man shoved past Maya's mother, his face inches from Elena's. You think you know her? You think you know what it's like to be us? His words dripped with venom, and Elena saw the truth in his rage. A lifetime of being dismissed, marginalized, judged. She knew that anger. She'd lived it, but she also knew it could destroy you if you let it. I know what it's like to fight for a place in a world that doesn't want you, Elena said, her voice low but unyielding. And I know Maya's fighting that fight right now. You can drag her down, or you can let her rise. The room held its breath. Maya's eyes glistened with tears, her hands trembling as she looked between her family and Elena. The man's fists clenched, but he didn't move. The mother's face softened, just for a moment, before hardening again. Get out, she whispered, not to Elena, but to Maya. Go, before you lose yourself here. Maya's sob broke the silence. She grabbed a worn backpack from the corner, her movements frantic, and pushed past her family toward Elena. The man shouted after her, but Maya didn't look back. Elena guided her out, her hand steady on Maya's shoulder, though her own heart was pounding. They didn't speak as they descended the creaking stairs, the weight of the moment too heavy for words. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and sharp. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Why did you come? Why do you care? Elena hesitated, her usual armor cracking. Because I see you, Maya. I see the fight in you, the same fight I had to win. And I'm not letting you lose it. They drove in silence to Elena's apartment, a sleek penthouse that felt like another world. Maya sat on the couch, clutching her backpack like a lifeline, her eyes darting around the pristine space. Elena poured 2 glasses of water, her hands still shaking from the confrontation. Tell me everything, she said, sitting across from Maya. No judgment. Just the truth. Maya's story spilled out in fragments. A childhood in that same tenement, a mother who loved her but resented her ambition, a brother who'd turned to drugs and saw Maya's success as a betrayal. She'd fought for her degree, for her job at Pinnacle, but her family's demands for money, for loyalty were suffocating her. They think I'm ashamed of them, she said, her voice breaking. But I'm just trying to survive. Elena listened, her heart aching with recognition. She'd faced similar scorn from her own community, the whispers of too good for us, that followed her success. But Maya's struggle was deeper, layered with the systemic barriers that came with being black in a world that often refused to see her worth. Elena had fought prejudice, but she'd had mentors, opportunities. Maya had neither until now. I'm not letting you go back there, Elena said firmly. You're staying here tonight. Tomorrow we figure out a plan, housing, support, whatever you need to keep going. Maya shook her head, tears spilling. Why are you doing this? I'm nobody to you. You're not nobody, Elena snapped, her voice thick with emotion. You're someone who's fighting to be more, and I'm not going to let the world or your family take that from you. The next morning, Elena called in favors. She secured Maya a subsidized apartment through a contact at a local nonprofit, arranged for counseling, and gave her a week's paid leave to regroup. But the real work was at Pinnacle. Elena saw it now. Her company, her pride and joy, was a microcosm of the world outside. It rewarded those who fit the mold and punished those who didn't. Maya wasn't failing because she lacked talent. She was failing because the system wasn't built for her. Elena called a meeting with her HR team, her voice sharp as she laid out a new directive. We're overhauling our support systems, mentorship programs, mental health resources, diversity training, real training, not lip service. I want every employee to feel like they belong here, not like they're fighting to survive. The team nodded, but Elena saw the skepticism in their eyes. Change was hard, especially in a company built on competition. But Elena was done playing by old rules. She'd seen what happened when you left people like Maya to fend for themselves. She wouldn't let it happen again. Back at her desk, Elena found a note from Maya, slipped under her office door. Thank you for seeing me. It read, in Maya's neat, careful handwriting. Elena's throat tightened. She tucked the note into her drawer, a reminder of why she'd fought so hard to get here and why she'd keep fighting. But the story wasn't over. Maya's family wasn't done with her, and Elena's changes at Pinnacle were stirring resentment among her top executives. The confrontation in that tenement was just the beginning. The real battle for Maya's future, for Elena's vision, for a world that didn't break people like them, was only getting started. The weeks that followed were a storm. Elena's overhaul at Pinnacle Enterprises sparked a firestorm of reactions, both within the company and beyond. Her HR team scrambled to implement the new initiatives, mentorship programs, mental health support, and mandatory diversity training, but the pushback was immediate. Senior executives, comfortable in their corner offices, grumbled about unnecessary changes and diverting resources. One VP, a silver-haired man named Richard, cornered Elena after a board meeting, his tone dripping with condescension. You're turning this company into a charity, Elena. We're here to make money, not fix people's personal problems. Elena's eyes narrowed, her voice cutting like glass. If you think ignoring half our workforce's potential is good business, Richard, you're not as smart as your paycheck suggests. She walked away, her heels clicking with purpose, but his words lingered. She knew the fight for change would be uphill, especially in a corporate world that prized profit over people. But Maya's face-haunted yet hopeful kept her grounded. This wasn't just about policy. It was about proving that people like them could thrive, not just survive. Maya, meanwhile, was rebuilding her life, one fragile step at a time. The subsidized apartment Elena had secured was small but clean, a stark contrast to the chaos of her family's tenement. She'd started therapy, paid for by Pinnacle's new employee support program, and the sessions were peeling back layers of guilt and fear she'd carried for years. But freedom came at a cost. Her mother's calls were relentless, a mix of pleas and accusations. You abandoned us, Maya, she'd say, her voice thick with hurt. You think you're better than your own blood? Her brother, Trey, was worse. His texts were erratic, sometimes begging for money, sometimes threatening to show up at her new place. Maya blocked his number, but the dread lingered. One evening, as Maya left her apartment to grab groceries, she found Trey waiting on the stoop. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes rumpled, but his voice was sharp with desperation. You owe me, Maya. You got out, but I'm still stuck. You gonna let me drown? He stepped closer, his shadow looming, and Maya's heart raced. She wanted to help him, she'd always wanted to, but she knew giving in would pull her back into the cycle she'd fought to escape. "Trey, I can't," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I'm barely holding on myself. You need help, but not from me." She turned to leave, but Trey grabbed her arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. "You don't get to walk away," he snarled. Maya yanked free, her fear giving way to anger. "I already did," she said, and ran back inside, locking the door behind her. She sank to the floor, sobs racking her body. But beneath the fear was something new. Resolve. She wouldn't let Haim or anyone drag her back. The incident shook Maya, but it also lit a fire in her. She threw herself into her work at Pinnacle, determined to prove she belonged. Her presentations grew sharper, her ideas bolder. Elena noticed, pulling her into a high-profile project to rebrand the company's community outreach. It was a chance to shine, but it also put Maya in the crosshairs of colleagues who saw her as an upstart. Whispers followed her in the break room. "She's only here because Elena's playing favorites. Affirmative action hire." The words stung, but Maya kept her head high, channeling her pain into her work. She'd heard worse from her own family. Elena, meanwhile, was facing her own battles. The diversity training sessions were met with eye rolls from some employees, and Richard was rallying allies to undermine her. At a tense board meeting, he presented a report claiming the new initiatives were financially unsustainable. The board, mostly older white men, leaned in, their faces skeptical. Elena stood, her presence commanding the room. "If we lose talent like Maya Johnson because we refuse to support her, that's the real financial loss," she said. "This isn't charity, it's strategy. The world's changing, and if we don't, we're done." Her words swayed some, but others remained unconvinced. Elena knew she was risking her reputation, maybe even her job, but walking away wasn't an option. She'd seen what happened when people like Maya were left to fend for themselves, and she'd felt the weight of her own privileged, stable family, mentors who'd opened doors. Maya had none of that, and Elena was determined to be the bridge she'd needed years ago. The turning point came unexpectedly. Pinnacle's rebranding project, led by Maya, caught the attention of a major clienta nonprofit focused on racial equity. They loved Maya's pitch, which wove her own story of resilience into the campaign. The client signed a multi-million-dollar contract, and suddenly, Maya wasn't just an employee. She was a star. The board took notice, and even Richard's allies quieted. Elena seized the moment, pushing through the rest of her initiatives with renewed momentum. But success didn't erase the past. One rainy afternoon, Maya found a letter slipped under her apartment door. It was from her mother, handwritten and smudged with tears. "I'm sorry," it began. "I was wrong to hold you back. I'm proud, Maya, even if I don't know how to show it." There was no mention of Trey, but Maya didn't expect one. She sat on her couch, clutching the letter, her heart torn between relief and grief. Reconciliation, if it came, would be slow. But for the first time, she felt unburdened, like she could breathe without guilt. Elena, too, was reflecting. She'd invited Maya to her penthouse for dinner, a rare gesture of vulnerability. Over glasses of wine, they talked not as boss and employee, but as women who'd fought similar battles. Maya shared her mother's letter, and Elena opened up about her own estrangement from relatives who'd called her a sellout for leaving her roots behind. "We carry so much," Elena said, her voice soft. "The world's judgment, our family's expectations. But you, Mayuri, breaking that cycle." Maya smiled, her eyes bright with something like hope. "I couldn't have done it without you. You saw me when I couldn't see myself." The dinner marked a shift. Maya became a mentor to other young employees at Pinnacle, sharing her story to inspire them. Elena doubled down on her mission, expanding Pinnacle's outreach to underserved communities. The company wasn't perfect, change was messy, and resistance lingered, but it was moving forward. Maya's success became a beacon, proof that talent could thrive when given a chance. 1 year later, Pinnacle hosted its first diversity summit, a packed event with Maya as the keynote speaker. She stood on stage, her voice steady, telling a room of executives and activists how she'd nearly lost herself to a system that didn't see her worth. She spoke of Elena, of the night that changed everything, and of the power of second chances. The audience rose to their feet, and Elena, watching from the front row, wiped away tears. She'd followed Maya home out of instinct, but what she'd found was a purpose bigger than herself. The story didn't end with applause. Maya's brother was still out there, lost to his demons. Elena's reforms faced constant scrutiny, and the world beyond Pinnacle remained divided. But Maya and Elena had built something real, a bond, a legacy, a crack in the walls that kept people apart. They'd shown that empathy could bridge divides, that one person's courage could ripple outward. What do you think? Can one act of compassion undo years of division? Or is the fight for justice too big for individuals to win? Share your thoughts. Where does the line between right and wrong blur in a world of broken systems and wounded hearts?